Hello and welcome to a conversation with Make UK about business travel to the EU. Today we're going to look at some of the myths and misconceptions and understand what has changed since the beginning of this year. I'm joined today by my colleague Jenny and by my colleague Nicola. We're just going to look at some of the issues that businesses need to be ready for and to remember why you need to check before you go. Nicola, over to you.
Thanks, Fergus. So I think the question we're asked the most is, why can't I travel to the EU like I used to? And followed by, what is the TCA?
Great questions, Nicola. I think starting with what is the TCA? The TCA is the Trade and Cooperation Agreement between the UK and the EU. That started at the beginning of this year and sets out how the UK and EU relationship will develop as the UK has now formally left the EU and the transition period has ended. Essentially, it sets out all of the requirements for businesses as they look to do business and travel into the EU. It sets out a number of criteria and options for how business travel will take place. But I think what we need to remember and what really has changed is that freedom of movement ended at the beginning of this year. That means that you will have to justify your entry into a country, and that's really the starting point for most of the discussions about business travel.
But Fergus, I thought the TCA allowed for a level of travel, so what specifically do we need to be looking at?
Jenny, I think there's two things to look at. The first is that travel and work are two separate issues. So understanding that the TCA does provide for travel, and certainly at a very high level, it provides for 90 days visa-free travel into the Schengen area. That is a total of 90 days in 180, and that is the total Schengen area. So you do need to make sure that you understand that trips to multiple countries will be all included in that 90, as well as business and private travel. So that's about travel. So there is provision for travel. What we need to look at is how that impacts how we work. And there are different requirements for when you're working. There are some lighter touch requirements for the type of work that you might be doing, but it's important to understand that if you're providing a service or you're looking at commercial activity, it's really important to check before you go because you might have additional requirements.
Fergus, so am I to understand that we now have to check this for every single country in the EU? It's not one rule applies for each country?
Nicola, great question again, and I think this is really important for companies to understand, is that the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, the TCA, does provide for a high level of mobility between the UK and the EU. But what you still need to do is look at the individual country's requirements, because while the TCA provides a framework, it's actually the legislation and the rules that in each individual country that apply. And that's certainly true when you're undertaking work. And it's important to understand that work may be defined differently in different countries. So checking before you go, looking at country-specific guidance and understanding the activity that you're undertaking are key to a smooth process.
One of the companies that I've been speaking to said that they were told that they might not be able to carry on doing the same activity and services that they did before. Is that true?
It really does depend on the activity. And looking at the sort of service model that we ran historically out of the UK, while it's not to say that it's not going to be possible, it may well be more complicated. And it could, depending on the complication and the additional cost associated with it, make it uncompetitive. But I think it's important to understand that there are mechanisms that companies can still provide services between the EU and between the UK and the EU, but that there are additional requirements, and it's important that companies check before they go to understand specifically what country requirements they will need to fulfill, and depending on the activity, what level of obligation they have to fulfill that.
Thanks, Fergus.